Restructuring means different things to different people at different times. Beyond being a word, how can restructuring be measured, calculated, or even determined? Babajide Gusawo, data scientist and information consultant, is here to share insights on the substance of restructuring. Great to have you on the News at 10, Babajide.
Good evening, Ayatollah.
All right, so we're talking restructuring. For you, what is restructuring all about? And is it only the poor that leads to, or is it only the door that leads to improved security and, welfare, as it were?
That's like three questions in one.
Yeah, three questions in one. But let's talk about restructuring, because it's a terminology that keeps coming up. So what is it all about?
I've thought about it. I've listened to a lot of arguments about restructuring. But for me, restructuring means three things. The first is restructuring is all about doing things right and doing the right things. That's the first. The second is there's no such thing as a restructured Nigeria. In other words, restructuring is not a bus stop. It's a journey. It is a continuous and perpetual journey. So you will never, from my own perspective, there's no such thing as a restructured Nigeria, because restructuring is continuous and perpetual, not a bus stop. That is the second thing. Now to the third and final, which is you can't and you cannot have restructuring without looking at the Constitution. So tonight I'd like us to start from looking at the history of the Constitution, because next year Nigeria will be celebrating 100 years of being a country with constitutions. And if we
going back to 1963
going back
Republican
to the
Constitution.
1922,
okay, go 1922
Clifford Constitution. And if we take a look at our history of constitutions, it allows us to understand the problem better. Because right from 1922, when we had the first Clifford Constitution, the evidence shows and reveals that the country wasn't built on ideologies or principles. It was built on resources, allocation, money. And so in 1922, you needed to have £100 to vote or to be voted for. And that continued even in 1946. You needed to have £50 to vote or to be voted for. So the basis of Nigeria's development really wasn't based on ideology or principles or policies. It was really, the focus was on money and resources. And that continued even up to 1954, and then we saw a lot of crisis and a lot of discussions on secession. And then came in the 1960 Constitution, and even though the Queen of England was still the commander-in-chief of the country in 1960, we saw some progress in 1960. 1960 was when we had those exclusive lists, the concurrent list, but that wasn't insufficient. In 1963, we needed another
constitution.
And in 1979, Nigerians then had the choice to vote for a president, and then our last constitution as amended, 1999.
And so we're still talking about amending the 1999 constitution even.
Next year,
there are calls for that.
Next year will be 100 years of us having constitutions, and yet we still are talking about restructuring. And that's why I say that restructuring is not a bus stop. It's a continuous and perpetual discussion that we would have. So we'll never get to a point where we'll celebrate that Nigeria is restructured, because Nigeria will always be restructuring.
Now, let's look at the issue of money sharing. I mean, how monies should be shared. Isn't this the bone of contention, really, from those calling for restructuring?
You're right. It might not be the bone, but the evidence shows that it's the major bone. And there are three reasons why it's the major bone. The first is 34 out of Nigeria's 36 states get more money from the Federation account, Abuja, than they do from their states. Keep that in mind. 34 out of 36 states get more money going to Abuja than they generate from their state. The second question will then be, if they go to Abuja to collect money from the Federation account, how is the Federation account funded? And the central bank provides us that answer. They say more than half of the money in the Federation account comes from oil. Then the third question is, how sustainable or how important is oil still in Nigeria's economy? The National Bureau of Statistics has the answer. They say last year, 75% of all we exported from this land was still oil. And so if we look at even the history of oil sharing to understand today's problem, in 1960, this is how money was shared. 50% of what you earn from oil from your region, 50% you will keep. You will then put 30% into a pool that will be shared among other regions, and the federal government in 1960 will collect only 20% of your oil money. Again, in 1960, you keep 50% of your oil proceeds in the region. You put 30% in a pool that will be shared across all regions, and then 30% goes to the federal government. Today, what do we have? You only keep 13%. Compare that to 50% in 1960. And the remaining 87% goes into a pool that now is shared among the federal government, the states, and the local government. And that is the bone of contention. It is really all about, though that is the major bone, it is about we need to keep our money. But why are these discussions coming in now, Ayotunde? And it's because these discussions have always been there from what we've shown from history. But why it is more intense now is that in 1960, Nigeria had a population that was significantly below what it is today. Nigeria's population in 1960 was less than 60 million. Today, we have over 200 million people. The size of the land is still the same.
Still the same.
But the demands from the citizens for improved security and welfare is rising. That is the challenge we face.
Big challenge. So then how can equity or equality be measured? It's not just current system of public administration. Is it really, can we get anywhere with this?
So I like the way you started. We've looked at the history. We've then continued by looking at what is the challenge, which is all revenue. But we have calls and people are concerned that they are being treated fairly. So let's look at the facts about representation, because that allows us to really address the solutions regarding this discussion of restructuring. And if we look at the facts, starting from where are the representatives of the people, the National Assembly? So it is correct to start from the principle of looking at how representatives are distributed in Nigeria. So we have 469 representatives in the National Assembly. But here are the facts, Ayotunde. Most of Nigeria's representatives come from the northwestern region. 113 representatives come from the northwest. The least represented region is the southeast. The southeast has only 58 representatives. But let's be clear. The next question we should ask is, why is the southeast the least represented in the National Assembly? And if we take a look at the fact, it allows us to understand that this perhaps was not done maliciously. It was based on population distribution and the census. And so if we take a look at the population distribution based on what the National Population Commission counted, they say that the Northwest, yes, has 24% of the representatives in the National Assembly, but they claim that the Northwest has, or their evidence shows that the Northwest has a population of 26%. The evidence from our population census, if accurate, shows that the Southeast only has a population of 12%, and so they have only 12% representation in the National Assembly. But here's the challenge, Ayotunde. What are the implications of the low representation of the Southeast? The implication is that if you look at the top 10 states that have the most representatives at the National Assembly, all zones are present, excluding and except the Southeast. So in front of you are the top 10 states in Nigeria that have the most number of representatives at the National Assembly. Kano, 27 representatives at the National Assembly. Lagos, 27. Sokoto, 14. But among these top 10, you see states across the Northwest, the North Central, the Northeast, the Southwest, the South-South, but there is no state in the Southeastern region. And that is the challenge, one of the major challenges that those that are calling that are screaming out
for restructuring
in the Southeast are looking at. So in the final analysis, I'll tell you this. Let us never fear to negotiate, but let us never negotiate out of fear. John F. Kennedy.
Babajide Guso, data scientist and information consultant, thank you so much for your thoughts right there.
The pleasure is all mine.